How come at Bishan, 1 month can have so many units selling cheaper than Punggol?
Recently, I sold a few HDB and I noticed a big trend behind it that somehow nobody have ever touched on it before about older HDB, and I decided to do a research on it. Today, I'm going to share is perceived value. What is perceived value? Perceived value is actually how much consumer willing to pay for a unit.
From here, you can see that Bishan HDB 5-room is actually selling cheaper than Punggol. 590 to 668 for Bishan, and you can see that Punggol is actually above 700,000. So what did I do here is I actually sort out all by price. For Bishan, I actually sort out the lowest price. And for Punggol, it is actually the highest price. Meaning that cheapest unit in Bishan is 590, most expensive unit in Punggol is actually 760. You can tell me, Gary, this is not fair. But my question is, how come at Bishan, 1 month can have so many units selling cheaper than Punggol? Isn't it something worth looking at? But don't get me wrong, Punggol also got a lot of 5-rooms selling cheaper too. So what actually happened? Cause in Punggol, sellers and buyers perceive the place at the same value and come to a consensus that the deal is done. Why is it like that? Cause all owner wants to sell at 660k and above. So when the buyer try to offer a few units at the same cluster, they can't get it. Either they change to another cluster, if not, they have to bite the bullet and go ahead with 660 and above. This is another cluster. And what happened? Owner who see neighbors selling at 660k, 670k, will you sell cheaper than them? Most likely you will not. And usually, when a buyer see a transaction selling at 670 before, will they be more willing to pay? Usually, they will. Within all sellers, maybe they even have a group chat which is formed up back then when they started to move in, and they will always discuss what kind of price they are selling at their development, at their cluster. So all these transactions come from these two transactions which is started the trend at 670. And how come they can have such consensus on what price to sell? Cause they all buy almost same price during BTO, and today they are not here to make 300,000-400,000 profit. So naturally they are making 150,000-200,000 profit, which is a very standard range for BTO seller to sell their house. So naturally they will come up to a consensus on what kind of price they are selling. So now, what about Bishan? Can I say most of the buyers who are going to Bishan to buy a property, actually they are very willing to pay. And their perceived value is actually quite high for a start. But what actually happened here? Can you see before 2008, owners are willing to sell below 400k. So meaning even at 400k, they more or less already make profit, but they didn't sell back then. Maybe because they are staying inside, maybe they got other plans back then. And this is the reason why the perceived value of all these owners can get lower than the buyers in the market. Just example, imagine you go to your ama place or your friend's ama house. Will you suddenly lower the perceived value of that place too? Cause it is older, more rundown, and many times the last renovation done is actually 30 years ago. And most importantly, all these owners who bought at a cheaper price, they don't mind selling lower. Imagine below 400k, they already make profit. Will you mind? Will they mind if they have to sell at 600k today? Or will they, very insist of without 700k, I won't sell. And now I'm talking about all these owners being the uncle, aunties that are the first owner. So what happened today? You will see people willing to sell at 590, 608 from first to third story. Guess how much did I sold a 4th floor unit at this place? 718k. The neighbor of the same 4 to 6 floor unit sold at 660, 627. This is when you are able to align the perceived value of the buyer with you to come to a consensus that it is worth more and ignore all those lower transactions. Then you are able to bring up their value and selling at a much higher price. How to do that? If got chance, I will create another video to talk about this. Now I will quickly show you a few more examples that I personally came across. Next, Marine Parade area. Before 2008, people are selling at less than 500k. Now, I sold this place at 790 and plus k. Got neighbor willing to sell 4th to 6th floor at only 655. Why they are selling so cheap? Because of their perceived value. His is 4th to 6th floor. Mine is on the 6th floor. So you can see it's a big jump in terms of pricing. And because they perceive that they cannot sell too high. One more will be Simei. Before 2008, selling at below 400,000. Now I sold 595k for a 7th floor unit. People sell at 495, 465 for 4th to 6th floor, 1 to 3rd floor, and I am selling at much higher price. So if you are the buyer of the place that you see people sell at 465k, what is your perceived value of that block? Cannot be too far from that, right? This is why sometimes better location yet sell cheaper, because the perceived value of all the owners did not come to a consensus. Anyone want to know how to bring up the perceived value together at the whole block? Go to all the unit in your block and get everyone to come to a consensus not to sell too cheap. This is the only way. But is it really easy? It is not, because everyone has different needs and different wants, unless you are very united in the whole block. So how do we be very careful on what are we holding on now or plan to buy next? What kind of property that perceived value will be much protected? These are a few examples that we can look at. First, we can look at landed property, because people value land more than the house, and there will be consensus on the land price. Second, we can look at condo with a big plot of land, and along the way, the perceived value will increase together with the chances of en bloc happening. Because why? It is still voiced down to the land price. Third, new property from developer, cause most of the people buy same price and they want to sell higher in future. And all buyers who are buying the new development from you after TOP, they are willing to pay higher. And regularly people are just programmed this way unless the market is really bad. So there will be consensus on the value along the way. So last question, how come HDB keep losing its perceived value? Actually, before that, it is not like that. Last time, HDB price keep increasing also. But after this confirmation from the government, which caused everyone perceived value on older HDB has dropped. What news is it? Not all old HDB are eligible for en bloc. This is actually announced in the parliament and it is actually discussed in the parliament before.
If you want to understand how to look at perceived value better so that you can get a good property to stay, or should you hold on to your current property longer, can always drop me a message and we can discuss about it. Remember, my mission here is to bridge up the information gap between the market and the consumer. That's all I have for today. I will see you all real soon. Bye bye.